Welcome again to Talawa Justice Talks, where we talk about issues concerning women, victims, and reparations. Today, I am honored to have a very influential and passionate women's rights activist and someone with such a strong desire to serve her community. Her name is Videshni Singh. She is the founder of Lightworkers, a nonprofit organization based in South Africa that is dedicated to empowering women and children and recovering drug addicts. Despite her 27-year journey in law, which included even training as an acting magistrate in the children's court, Videshni has stayed true to her heartbeat of serving communities in desperate need. She became a voice for social service institutions and nonprofit organizations responsible for improving the lives of the poorest of the poor. So strong has been her commitment that she has even been recognized by Madiba himself with a special note to her. And she even has a photo with President Mandela that we will probably include in this video. Videshni has not only served at the national level, but she is currently pursuing another important passion of hers to do international humanitarian work by serving as the resource acquisition officer of one of the largest African-based international NGOs called Joint Aid Management, or JAM. Videshni, welcome to Talawa Justice Talks.
Thank you so much, Lorraine. Thank you for having me.
You are a lawyer with more than 27 years of experience in your field, but yet there is this latent passion and desire to serve communities in need, and particularly to work with women and children. Tell me about that. What drives that passion?
Lorraine, I think after almost 27 years of experience in law, I had the benefit of driving, law from different positions, whether it was in the corporate space as a legal advisor, and then I went on to, lecturing law, serving as a magistrate, working as a senior legal advisor. All those positions never afforded me the direct insight into the brokenness of communities. I was always operating at a space where every day was about improvement of the professional skills that I had. I think it was truly only after the birth of my son, he was born a special needs baby, did I even go on a journey of self-transformation. My own journey began. And one of the important things that affected me then, especially bearing a special needs boy, was, how imperfect our world is and how imperfect our existence is, yet we strive for perfection and putting perfection first in all that we do. Why this shook me is because I brought home a baby that was visually disfigured, and the family members around, couldn't deal with having an imperfect baby. That took me levels deep into journey of womanhood, and for me it was very much a spiritual transformation, because I had to understand that it was women and mothers themselves who demonstrate, all the qualities of cooperation, support, working for the good of the whole than just individuals. That has to fundamentally change in order for us to raise imperfection to the levels of what we believe will be perfect for the common good. So it was really and truly this that shook my world and opened me into service in communities. For years, I had been making sandwiches like everybody else and engaging in feeding schemes to those less fortunate. But it was only when I took myself from the delivering of the sandwiches to actually spending days in the communities, just walking around, and through Lightworkers and my association with social services, seeing the absolute breakdown in society, I felt that, there is a calling in all women. And that was the igniting spirit for me. It was to actually communicate to others how deeply I was feeling that life is more than all of the titles that we achieve, whether it is in our careers or in our professional development. It is more about that connection with people and how we can transform in the journey of assisting others on the ground. So for me, it was really this factor that changed my whole view of the world. I was starting to think, how could someone like me take their professional skills to actually start integrating what I felt was the brokenness in society? And for me, it was joining social service programs. I was a great advocate of creating a local drug action committee in the community in which I worked, because I knew how. I could read the legislation and I saw the benefits of creating a local drug action committee. I went to the local social services, and with them, we knocked at the doors of the department to create one. And it was there that I realized that we can use all of our professional skills to actually make a difference on community and on ground level. But truly, how many of us are willing to do that in our active lives? Most women that I speak to and that I know are actually wanting to fit in this kind of service in their calendars. And for me, it's more than just the feel good factor. I believe women are born with an inherent ability to create change. And unless they explore that to the fullest, then we are not serving our purpose as women. Women have the ability to heal societies.
This is so powerful. This is an incredibly powerful statement. And I have heard this said in different ways by women leaders in different contexts, women who are former survivors, women who have been abducted, but who have still found the resilience to come back and to serve their communities, to serve other women survivors and children. So, but tell us more about light workers and how light workers help to fulfill the passion that you have for service.
Okay, so in terms of light workers, I gathered a group of professional women together, and they are all, very well-regarded, well-respected women in our country, and especially in Gauteng, and they serve on many international boards. Lorraine, when we embarked on service and being a channel to serving the needs of the poor, we wore our professional robes in that service. So we went out to communities, we drafted these needs lists for the communities, and we provided everything that two roads in the particular community that we were working in had for, making sure that we were leading drives to get their needs to them over like a period of 2 weeks. We achieved it all. We sat back in our offices and thought, wow, look how great and look how far we've come. Give ourselves a pat on the back. 2 weeks later, I walked in the same community where we fulfilled all the needs of the people, whether it was beds, microwaves, food, nappies for children, and I found nothing that we gave. So there was the true test of our purpose and our mission and our vision in this organization. Were we just going to be the channel that took from those that had to those that did not have, or were we going to focus on creating impact with our organization? And that is where we decided to become committed to the fight against addiction, because we found that the reason that all those items weren't in the households that we had provided them to was because they were sold to support addiction. Now, another very encouraging and very powerful message in service to communities that I found is that communities are the same all over the world. All the social ills are married, because whether we're talking to addiction, we realize that those addictive have had some, experience of gender-based violence or sexual violence imposed on them. So you realize that once you are looking to create impact in poverty-driven areas, that there is a whole host of social ills that arise there that is replicated the world over. So, one of the main things that Lightworkers brought us was an opportunity to create these programs that we could actually engineer and produce and support in those communities. So, for a short part of my life, I also went to work at social service institution. While I was a legal advisor, I worked as a marketer. So I was doing marketing for social services, but there was a greater intention behind that work. Because I had worked with the community the previous 5 years, I could see very clearly the kind of programs that were required by social services. And not to say that they hadn't thought about those programs themselves. Of course, they were dealing those issues. But I was coming with fresh insight now into researching, and I researched across international platforms for solutions, say perhaps to gender based violence. And I started the Stop It at the Start campaign based on the campaigns that I saw overseas, because at social services, we saw a whole host of boys that were, physically molesting each other at the age of 11 years old. And we had to provide solutions. So, why this work kept me alive for so many years is because we were actively engineering solutions through our association with social services, where we rehabilitated families, um, children as young as 7 years old who were already addicts. We rehabilitated women in those societies. We created homework centers using the same rehabilitated women to actually make lunches for those children in the communities. And for them too, it became a transformational journey, because it was only in the service of their community members that they realized the faults in their own past, their addiction and how it affected their families. So those solutions and the ability to work with social services and create programs through Lightworkers, supporting them financially, because in this country, social service institutions have to actually raise their own funding. And we know that we can all have the most brilliant ideas, but unless we have the funding to realize it, everything fails. And we have advocates like me all over the world that are willing to give up their time and to be the answer. But until we find solutions to empower the very people like me, give financial support to the programs, we are never going to succeed in making a difference in this world.
Mm-hmm. And this, I think, it leads us to the broader question of sustainability, and sustainability at a broader level in terms of how do we make the programs that we support more sustainable. But I want to tackle this also from the perspective of sustainability as a leader, as a potential leader. How does a woman who sees a need, like how you saw a need, find it within herself to respond to that need, and then to sustain the energy to keep working for solutions, despite, as you mentioned, possibly other commitments, despite a professional, a very busy professional calendar? How is it possible to sustain that drive, that passion to serve?
I believe, Lorraine, it comes in everybody that groups together behind you as support. And for me, it was largely through the funding that I enjoyed through some, major golf associations around us in Gauteng, where we had, collected large amounts and sums of money from them, that enabled us to actually create the programs that we did and support them financially. I mean, we could all have the wonderful ideal of putting people in rehabilitation centers, but those centers are, over inundated in our country, and we don't have centers that actually focus on children. So when we have children, we have to create solutions for them. And for me, it was going and finding those places, placing children in those centers, and finding the money in order to sustain the program. So a lot of the work that we do, passion never flails in this job. If you have a passion to serve, that passion will always be ignited by watching the little specks of transformation happen in the people that you are serving. I don't believe that, there's anything in terms of the passion that can derail you from the service. But if I had to be very real about my journey, it was the absolute burnout around the fact that I found that if I continue to operate from a space of I am being a hero in this community, and if I continue to operate out of ego, and if I continue to operate from the space that I am going to provide every solution that this community needs, then I'm going to fail, because burnout comes as a result of you making the work about yourself in many ways.
Mm-hmm.
While I had the passion, while I had the drive, I can relate to you how I was buying bread for the homework center once, on my credit card, and my card was rejected. And that's where I realized, hang on here, Videshni. You've got all these programs going. It is true that you have some financial support, but my whole objective in actually motivating for people like me that are trying to be solutions in themselves, in giving up their whole lives to serve, will be around the fact that even those people require support. Even
Mm-hmm.
those people require emotional support. Even those people require financial support. We need to take care of our own well being in taking care of others too. And that has been a very large factor in this entire journey for me. We wear the capes of heroes when truly, if we want to transform and if we want to experience the maximum benefit of self transformation, it comes from this position of selflessness. But how wonderful it would be to keep people with the same drive and passion sustainable in creating funding opportunities for them too. Nothing exists in this world.
Yes. I mean, I think every woman leader who is putting everything into survivor organizations would agree with you at this point. I personally find, having spoken to women who lead organizations in Uganda, in Rwanda, in Jamaica, just in the global south, that there is a dearth of funding for organizations that are grassroots organizations, community-based organizations, whether they're led by women or men, but I'm focusing on women, so that it is sustainable. Because ultimately, it feels as if you're starting every time from scratch. You get project-based funding, you get resources to take it to a certain point, and then you cannot go further. So it is, I do understand what you mentioned in terms of that issue. But the other question is, you talked about burnout. You talked about how possible it is when, you as the woman are leading, are driving the ship, that there is the possibility of burnout. What are some of the things, apart from funding, that you think would help to counter some of that? There's a lot of talk these days about mentorship and coaching. What do you think would be the role of mentoring and coaching for women who are leading survivor organizations?
Lorraine, I believe that all of the solutions actually lie in mentorship and coaching of these women. Now, I saw it from a different level because, I'm also a life coach and I was busy working on transformational programs for women. Number one, what actually served as an empowering factor in my relationship with those women that I was seeing every week was the fact that here I was, a professional woman, giving them time to counsel them, giving them a listening ear, helping them find direction. I could never discount the value of mentorship and coaching in my own existence and through what I was able to give others. And it is truly only in the coaching and the mentorship that you can actually give value to people like these community women that are standing at the forefront of dealing all of the social issues, that you could actually give them that kind of phenomenal support. I believe that is the answer because I saw it in the space where I was offering same to our beneficiaries. Just that little bit of time, that mentorship, that coaching, that understanding of, I know what you are going through, but look at what you have achieved. Look at how far you've come in your journey. And for me, as a person that was, standing at the forefront of it, it was coaching and mentorship that I might have, received from my friends on the journey, telling me that don't give up, Videsh. Look at the programs that you have run. How wonderful it would have been for me as a professional also to and as a community leader to actually have access to this mentorship and this counseling and this coaching that would empower me to want to even do more in the community in which I was serving. Of course, I see that as a motivation factor to obviously decrease the burnout in community leaders.
Mm-hmm. You have now taken a lot of your passion and your skills and transposed that from community service to the international level, because you're now working for a large international humanitarian organization. How do you see some of the skills and the experience at the community level informing your approach to your work at this level?
Okay, so at an international level, what I've noticed is we speak about strategy planning, we talk about around theories of change. And for me, it is a constant reminder that it actually all goes back to the communities in which we are working, the people that we are working with. So our international organization is charged with feeding Africa. That's what we do. But our main motto is helping Africa help itself. And why I believe that this community experience can transpose to international experience is fundamentally because all communities, no matter what their starting might be, whether it was, the fact that we are talking about the refugee communities that you have worked in, all over Africa, we're plagued by same. We're working in the same environments. For me, it would be a realization of taking those programs to the community levels, empowering women at that level to make them understand the difference that they can make. Because for me, sustainability actually begins with women and ends with women. Women are the procreators. Of course, men are part of the journey, and of course, they are needed in terms of every kind of support that men can offer. But the reality is, when you watch the magic of women in these refugee communities, how they are able to recreate their existence, even though they might have, suffered rape, gang rape, you'd name it, the deepest atrocities. Last year I was sitting in a strat session and I was just crying uncontrollably over the experience related around a 9-year-old Ugandan refugee that had crossed the border with her baby brothers on her arms after witnessing their parents being slaughtered, to death. And it was that kind of raw experience that actually forced me to question. Now, hang on here, Videshni. All your journey seems to be showing you is more and more the brokenness of people.
Yeah.
Now, we were able to find solutions for the brokenness of people in the community levels at which I was working. And here I was now transposing that work to an even more international level and with deeper atrocities. And for me, it all comes down to that we can't just leave people in a certain state. Creating a homework center is well and good. Giving people some meaning in their lives, making sure that they have a vegetable garden growing is all well and good. Giving them some form of sustainability is great. But if we actually want to create impact, my question is, why aren't all of us looking at the psychosocial issues that are affecting these communities? We must look more at more than just at being a solution to provide a needs gap. We have to look at more than being just a sustainability gap in their lives. We have to look at how can we also play a role in serving people who have been so emotionally torn in their life's journeys that they can't function. And when they can't function, it leads to addiction. It leads to greater sexual violence. It leads to murder. It leads to not valuing lives. So for me, a huge part of what I'm going to take from community experience to working on the international level is also adding this experience that I've had to the programs that we create under sustainability. And psychosocial service issues and sustainability of women is so important in terms of the work going forward.
That is such an important point. It is an absolutely important point. I've seen that in the context of Uganda. Many women leaders who you talk to who are former survivors, they say one of the greatest needs in particularly northern Uganda, where the war has ended over 20 years now, and somehow the international community and others feel it is time for people to move on. But how do you move on when the wounds, the basis of of what caused the trauma in the first place has not been healed? It has not been addressed, and so they are still asking for psychosocial support. That is one of the greatest needs that you still have in areas like in northern Uganda, and I'm sure it's the same in Rwanda. It's in a lot of post-conflict zones, the need for psychosocial support is still huge. Videshni,
Yes.
what would you say as sort of the final words to a woman who has heard you, has listened to your journey, your story, who feels like this is perhaps something that she would like to do? What would you say to her?
I know that I have been speaking on many platforms about the transformative nature that service can have to you. And I know that, in even mentioning these words, sometimes I question, but is it selfish to want that kind of transformation? And then I go back all the time to that I don't believe that we've, come on this earth just to achieve for ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
We have come on this earth to realize that ultimately each of us are connected and we fundamentally impact each other's journey. Look at COVID and the realization of the unity of this world. It brought us a humility in understanding that there is no distance and no difference between us, whether we're out in the rural area, in a community, whether we are standing on an international board, all of us are connected. And I believe that fundamentally, what selfless service brings to us is a transformational tool in itself. The Western world, and I'm sorry, I don't mean any disrespect, believes that women have to also be selfish. And that is true. A large part of what we aim to achieve has to arise by taking care of our needs. But in my journey, and what I would like to share is that it is actually through selflessness that you can transform your entire nature, your entire being. It makes you realize the impact of being born and being born to make a difference. And for me, these would be the words that I would impart. I relate this back to my lecturing in law with law students. They were all youngsters and they were eager to take my class because here I was, one of the lecturers who basically lived the dream. She got articles at one of the top 5 law firms in the country, and I want to be just like her and get my articles there and have this wonderful name for myself. And it was shocking that because I was already going through the journey with Lightworkers, my lectures to them also focused on, right, so we can achieve all of this, but how are we going to use it to impact the lives of others? And some of them might have not liked that discussion then, but I actually have evidence years later that those same students are still following me and basically, applauding the levels of the work that I have been doing by sticking to this passion of service, and are seeing in being part of my journey the absolute difference that it has made at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So, to all youngsters, nobody tells you that there is a profession as a humanitarian that exists, and that's because who wants to do the work where you see suffering and broken people every day? But there is a greater factor in all of this and behind all of this. And there is a greater drive in that every day when you are involved in this type of work, you wake up to realize I am making a difference. I am leaving a legacy, and I am creating a gap and filling this gap purely through my existence, which in itself is transformational to any individual.
Thank you so much. There is absolutely nothing that I could add to those powerful words of wisdom. Videshni, it has been such a pleasure talking to you. And I really thank you for your service to humanity, for your hard work in this area. And I hope that when we speak again, and we will continue to speak because Videshni will be working very closely with us at Talawa Justice for Women, and we will continue to amplify the voices of women who are trying to make a difference in their community at the national level, at the regional levels, and at international levels, because we are all, as you say, called to serve. Thanks again.
Thank you so much for this opportunity, Lorraine. I believe you are phenomenal to bring women together. Thank you.